Early in the session, lawmakers approved a bill cutting the state's top income tax rate from 5.25% to 5% in 2016, if revenue projections are enough to cover the lost revenue. Oklahoma City Attorney Jerry Fent has filed a lawsuit challenging that bill. Fent claims the legislation is unconstitutional based upon a constitutional amendment approved by voters 22 years ago. I spoke with State Impact's Joe Wirtz about State Question 640 and how it continues to affect Oklahoma's budgeting process. Joe, how has 640 affected the legislative process?
Well, if you would consider one of the main responsibilities of a lawmaker in the legislature is to talk about revenue and talk about taxes and how to take in money and how to spend it, it's made it difficult, and it's made things challenging, and it's made things unclear. You hear a lot of discussions up there now about raising revenue and cutting taxes that don't actually have to do with raising taxes and cutting revenue, because you can't. 640 made it politically very challenging to raise taxes once they've been cut. So now you see all these complicated workarounds to try to affect that.
And confusing to some.
It's confusing to some. It's confusing to a lot of lawmakers with this oil and gas drilling incentive bill that passed. You see lots of confused lawmakers asking about it. Speaker Hickman having to reiterate over and over that we're talking about an incentive, not a tax rate. It's confusing all around. People don't know what they're voting on.
Secretary of Finance Preston Dorflinger says that 640 is not a factor in the budget equation.
It's not a factor in the budget equation for the people writing the budget, a lot of Republicans, and they're not going to raise taxes. They don't want to raise taxes. So it doesn't figure into their calculations because that's never a political calculation for them.
Can it limit the state's financial viability, and has it?
A lot of people have argued that it has, and it makes the state less flexible to be able to change to whatever's going on with the economy or whatever's going on with business and industry. It's one less tool that you have in the toolbox.
What's the upside? Supporters obviously see a reason for maintaining 640.
Supporters see it as you want to have a big burden, a big legislative burden to have to raise taxes, and that if you cut them, the tax cut should stay. But I'm not sure the people that had envisioned 640 coming in and keeping it as a way to prevent tax increases had ever envisioned all this stuff with tax credits, economic incentives that can go up and down, and that's the way these things are being handled.
It also holds that revenue bills cannot be passed in the last 5 days of the session.
That's true, and that has not prevented bills that seem to be revenue bills from being passed during the last 5 days in sessions previously. And this drilling bill, Jerry Fent is already talking about a challenge based upon that. The question is this a revenue bill, or is this a bill about a tax incentive or an economic incentive? We're getting really semantic on some of the language here. A lot of people are defining very narrow terms on how this stuff is.
And when you say revenue bill, does that pertain to revenue going up or down, or does it make a difference?
Well, to Jerry Fent, who I talked to, says it does make a difference. If it's going down, he sees less of a problem and less likely that he'll challenge it. But when you take an economic incentive that sets a tax rate at 1% and then put in a new one that's 2%, it's doubled, taxes going up, that is likely to draw a challenge.
Has 640 affected the state's credit rating?
It has. It's the credit rating has been a factor in some of the credit rating stuff, although the state's credit rating is pretty good. But some analysts have said the lack of ability for the state to change its financial revenues, to flex them, to adjust them to economic conditions, makes the state vulnerable, puts you in a position to where you can't change things. You're stuck.
It's a fascinating story. Joe Wirtz from State Impact Oklahoma. Thank you.
Thank you so much.